Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack, back in to bring you all the changes for Mistweaver Monk at the moment in the War Within Alpha. The spec has had a few different talent changes throughout its spec and class tree, with some really cool abilities returning and some new ones coming into the equation. First, let's start off by Mistweaver being the most mobile healer ever. Oh my goodness gracious. You have a couple new talents, rushing reflexes, where your roll is going to like sprint you towards another enemy. Basically, if you're within a few yards of an enemy as you're rolling towards it, it'll kind of just close the gap and you end up almost inside that mob in the process. But this also notably shares a choice node with a little ability called Clash. With a 30-second cooldown, you are charging to your target then charges to you, and then all targets within 6 yards are then rooted for 4 seconds. This ability was insane back in Shadowlands and even before then, and now Mistweaver also has access to it in addition to Brewmaster. There's another talent called Lighter Than Air, where roll causes you to become lighter, allowing you to double jump and dash forward. Let me show you how this works. So basically, once you roll, you have 5-second buff where you're then able to double jump and sprint forward. You might have also just seen that other roll ability, which we had just talked about with the rushing reflexes, where I then sprinted to the sand shell and then was able to kill it off very quickly. There's also more mobility coming into the equation with Transcendence Linked Spirits. So if you've ever played with like an Aug Evoker, you'll notice that they have like source magic where you target a player, you apply the buff to them, and you're set with a buff for an hour. Transcendence Linked Spirits works like this, where you target an ally. Instead of dropping your Transcendence node, you actually place it onto an ally for an hour, and then whenever you hit Transcend, you transcend to that ally, which is insanely valuable. You just have to make sure it's an ally that you, of course, can trust. And on the class tree, to wrap it up, you get pressure points, where paralysis now removes all enrage effects from its target, thus adding another spec into the game that's going to have some enrage removal. Mistweaver is looking very sick. There's a couple other like small talent changes. I think Fatal Touch is a little bit new on hand. There's some more movement speed ones. There's also the group buffs that were then removed or changed to be personal buffs. With some of the things, I think it's like Save Them All. I know Bounce Back has been personal. I wanted to say Windwalking stays in place because it's just movement speed, but the additional like Verse and Leech for your allies has all just been to personal. When it comes to the spec tree, you have Crane Style, where Rising Sun Kick, Spinning Crane Kick, and Blackout Kick can now trigger Gust of Mist, which is your mastery, and I assume it's going to be making mastery more relevant for fist weaving, basically. Nice to be able to see. Some abilities like Zen Pulse are now passive, where renewing Mist's heal over time is a chance to cause your next Vivify to also trigger the Zen Pulse on the target and all allies that have renewing Mist onto them, which is really nice. One less button you have to worry about, and you still get some fantastic extra triggers and some extra output that you get along the way. Now that brings us to the hero talents. As Conduit the Celestials I have a previous video on, I won't go over every little detail, but suffice to say that you have a 1.5 minute cooldown, which is pulsing damage and healing, and then when it ends, you get all of the powers of the Celestials. So by casting abilities, all of these Celestials are giving you various empowerments and also giving you better secondary stats. The TLDR version is that you can have a proc out of Nizao, where you have a quicker casting Enveloping Mist that also procs shields. You can have additional procs of damage at a Shwen. You have cooldown reduction at a Heart of the Jade, where your Rising Sun Kick, Renewing Mist, Life Cocoon, Thunder Focus Tea are all getting additional cooldown reduction for a short period of time. And the Red Crane is proccing some extra healing onto your allies. This hero talent is very fist weaving focused, as you're naturally getting these buffs and empowering yourself by just hitting the buttons you're usually using. And the more cast getting off, the more bonus damage, the more bonus healing, the more upgrades really that you're going to be getting from your Celestials. Now, the new one I really want to talk about is Master of Harmony. There wasn't any sort of blue post or announcement about this. It's just been available from the War Within Alpha. This is all about storing this vitality by doing damage or healing. And so by storing these up, you're able to spend them a little bit later on, and the output for the most part is going to be just healing. But there are some talent options that you can take that'll also convert that vitality into extra damage if you chose. What it's going to do is it's going to store that output in Thunder Focus Tea and give you an additional charge on its own, so you can have baseline 2 charges of Thunder Focus Tea on hand. And when you activate Thunder Focus Tea, you have a small window where you're going to be able to take that vitality that you've stored and be able to pump it out through additional healing. And so as you're building up this sort of overheal, it's almost like Mana Tea in a way. You store up this benefit and then you can pick and choose when you want to spend it, how you want to spend it, and how you want to utilize it. Offering like more frequent bursts, since you're already using Thunder Focus Tea mostly on cooldown, is going to add that extra bit of like pep to your output along the way. And there's even certain ways where you can sort of supercharge the amount of vitality that you have on hand. They're adding buffs to Chi Wave and Chi Burst. Regardless of which one you choose, when you activate that ability, Chi Wave or Chi Burst, it's then going to increase the amount of vitality that you generate. And so if you know that damage is incoming and then you're going to crank like a huge full stack Shayloon's Gift, or you're going to be using your Celestial or something to produce lots of healing, you would want to cast that Chi Wave first, so that way your vitality is then going to be increased, that's then stored into your Thunder Focus Tea, and so then you can sort of chain one cooldown into building up lots of vitality, into then spending that vitality a little bit later on down the line. Overall, I would say the gameplay is alright. Unfortunately, there's some bugs going on in alpha right now where spinning Crane Kick is getting interrupted by something for some strange reason. I also was finding that the Master of Harmony, through some of the passives that I had selected, was also just pulling extra trash, and so in the dungeon that we were doing, we were kind of fighting for our life there as some mobs are getting pulled through walls, which I don't think is going to be intended at all. That being said, the gameplay I experienced from Master of Harmony was just kind of eh. It definitely seemed like the more that you leverage it and the more you're actively playing around it, particularly in a 5-man, the better it might end up feeling. But I think that at best, this is kind of more raid focused as a talent, where you don't want to have just constant output all the time. You want to like store it, prepare it for certain bursts of damage, and then choose how you want to be able to utilize it from there. That was kind of the impression that I got. I'm not sure if there's much legs left for any sort of caster Mistweaver setup with the removal of Clouded Focus at the moment. So I'm not sure if this is an attempt to sort of like bring back caster Mistweaver in any sort of way. But I will say that the hero talents do offer a route where you're not really dependent on casting any sort of fist weaving spells or melee spells to be able to produce results the way that you are kind of required to when it comes to Conduit of the Celestials, where there's a lot of synergy with, you know, using like Tiger Palm and it's going to give you free envelops, or using Vivify is going to help proc extra output here or there. That doesn't really exist with Master of Harmony. So if there was a caster Mistweaver, it seems like this would be a little bit more along that route. And as a result, it also definitely kind of tracks with the trend I've experienced with caster Mistweaver, in that it's just kind of dull. Yeah, you're able to store up this output, use it for later on. It's kind of a trope that's been done a number of different times, and it feels a little bit slower to be able to work with. I didn't feel like I was able to just like push all of my output all at once into targets if I needed to. It seemed like I would spend just a fraction of the vitality at a time, and I wasn't really able to get all of the output just spent as fast as I possibly could and run out. So I'm curious if they're going to adjust how much the vitality is spent per ability, and how you're really going to be able to spend it or even focus it into a target. Because that's one thing I noticed, is that if you can activate Thunder Focus Tea and only be funneling output into one target, it could be really, really insane to be able to give you some additional or emergency spot healing, which you may not have as much of for fist weaving oriented builds, or if it's going to be something where it's just going to kind of spew light amounts of healing kind of across the board. It didn't seem too great. Otherwise, I did in general notice that healing is quite a bit slower on alpha, as our health pools have ballooned like 3 or 4 times the levels that they are in Dragonflight. We have like 4 million health or something crazy like that, and it's only 100 item level difference. So there's a lot of additional stamina that is being picked up, which also means that you're not just pumping up health pools as rapidly as you possibly can. You know, Shayloon's isn't this just like one button, hit everybody to max HP again. So as a result, you're kind of thinking more of how are you going to be able to sustain that output for long periods of time, and how are you going to be able to like sort of bounce back from some of the incoming hits, which would make me think that Master of Harmony would be pretty good. But from the gameplay I experienced, it just kind of seemed mediocre. And I've always been a huge fan of fist weaving for years now, and my thoughts are really leaning more towards Conduit of the Celestials. That said, I think it's a huge win if people do like this gameplay, and as long as they're not getting like forced into one or the other for, you know, the vast majority of content, I think it's going to be a win that you can just pick the playstyle that most suits you as a result. There's probably going to be some more tuning that they're going to be doing for these, so I'm not too worried about like the exact numbers right now, because some are obviously going to be stronger than others in the early alpha that we're at, but I'm excited to see where it's going to go from there. So if you're enjoying this content, make sure to subscribe to the channel, check out our live stream, and consider joining as a member or a patron if you'd like to support further. That would be fantastic. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll catch you all next time.